Picture this. You're pumping fuel at the gas station, you get distracted, and suddenly your fuel tank starts to overflow. Now, apply that same scenario, but to the loading rack. 10 times the product, 10 times the mess, and way bigger consequences. I've been hauling fuel for over 2 years, and trust me, this job is simple as long as you're locked in. But the moment you're not, that's when things go sideways. So how do you prevent a situation like this, and what actually happens when you don't? It's your boy Rio with Overhaul Truck Channel, and today we're talking about overfill prevention at the rack. And more specifically, what it means to Scully out and how it prevents spills. But first, what does it mean to Scully out? A Scully out is what happens when a driver loads a compartment with more product than that compartment can safely hold. Before the product actually overflows, it makes contact with the sensor on the dome lid of that compartment. When the sensor gets wet, it sends a signal through the Scully overfill protection system at the rack and shuts off the flow of the product. That shutdown is what we call a Scully out, and the important part is no spill occurs because the system caught it in time. So now that we actually know what it means, how do we avoid it? As you can guess, it all starts with loading your trailer the right way. In fuel hauling, the trailers we use for gasoline and diesel are split into multiple compartments, and each one has a different capacity. But loading those compartments isn't as simple as punching in whatever number you see on the label. For example, if a compartment is labeled for 2,350 gallons, you would never load it with that exact amount. Instead, you'd load it with something less, like 2,250 or maybe even 2,300. Because if you try to push that compartment to its full labeled capacity, the product is going to hit the overfill sensor on the dome lid before it ever gets full, and that will instantly result in a Scully out. So rule number 1, never load a compartment to its maximum capacity. Now imagine that the 2,250 gallons you intended to load into the right compartment accidentally gets loaded into a smaller compartment. This is where the Scully system protects you. Whether you load it into the right compartment or the wrong one, the Scully system dramatically reduces the chance of a spill. Now, does that mean that spills are impossible? No. There are certain rare situations where spills can still happen. But here's the part most new drivers don't think about. Even if you load the correct amount into the correct compartment, you can still Scully out if your trailer wasn't empty to begin with. One of the most important steps in proper loading is confirming that your compartment is completely empty. You can check this in one of two ways: a knock test or comparing your VEEDER root readings. If you skip this step and load on top of retained product, you're setting yourself up for a Scully out, even if all your other numbers are right. And in either scenario, whether you load it into the wrong compartment or you load it on top of retained product in the right compartment, one thing is for sure: you're going to have to contact the terminal operator. Once the Scully system shuts down the flow of product, you can't simply reset it and keep loading. The operator has to step in, verify the issue, and assist with the correction. And that brings me to my next point. What happens when you actually Scully out? When a Scully out occurs, the trailer can no longer be grounded through the Scully system. That means you can't load anymore. Now the rack operator has to step in and manually work with your trailer to make the product deliverable. This mainly applies to gasoline that contains ethanol, the most common blend being E10, which means that it's 10% ethanol and 90% gasoline. The loading arms used to fill the trailer have two separate valves, one for gasoline and one for ethanol. The rack's computer mixes them based on the total gallons you punch in. So for example, if you load 3,300 gallons of E10, you need 330 gallons of ethanol and 2,970 gallons of gasoline. That gives you a proper 10% blend. But now let's say you Scully it out because you tried to put those 3,300 gallons into a 2,600 gallon compartment. The Scully system shuts down the flow of the product, and now the blend is off and the compartment is bad. The operator now has to fix that blend by adding the remaining gasoline and ethanol into an empty compartment, creating a proper blend that can actually be delivered. If you don't have an empty compartment available, they'll usually seal the back compartment so it cannot be delivered. Once you deliver your good compartments and come back to the rack, the operator will use one of your now empty compartments to rebuild a good blend using the product from that bad compartment plus whatever gas and ethanol is needed to correct it. If you've got multiple compartments that are no good, and there's no way to fix all of them with your trailer, the carrier will have to send another driver with an empty trailer. That driver gets loaded with the rest of the gasoline and ethanol needed to repair the blend, and then the product from both trailers has to be delivered into the same tank to make the correct blend. So as you can see, this gets very complicated very fast. All over something that was 100% preventable. So just take your time. Make sure you're loading the right amount of product into the right compartment and make sure those compartments are actually empty. And that brings me to my last and final point. What are the penalties for an error like this? For one thing, you'll be locked out of the rack. Most of the time it's a few days, but if you keep making the same mistake, you can be locked out indefinitely. How you get back to loading after that lockout ends depends on the rack. In my experience, some racks let you go right back to loading once your lockout period ends. Other racks are stricter though. For example, Chevron. You have to take a class before you can start loading again, and that class is only offered once a month. So if that class is on the first Monday of every month, and you get locked out on the second Monday of that month, now you're waiting almost a full month before you can even take the class, let alone get back to loading out of that particular rack. And there's good reason for all of this. A Scully out takes time out of the operator's day, time that they could be allocating to handling other operations around the rack. But instead, now they're stuck fixing a mistake that was completely avoidable. And that doesn't even include whatever discipline your carrier decides to hit you with. So the lesson is simple. Do everything right the first time. Slow down, double check and triple check everything that you're doing. Remember, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Thank y'all for tuning in once again. As always, let me know what y'all thought about this video in the comments. And of course, any additional experiences, any input y'all have, just let me know. And I will catch y'all on the next one. This has been your boy Rio with Overhaul Truck Channel, and I will see y'all next time. I'm out.